Jaco. Baie groete, nie meer lank nie, dan is het by die huis. Liefde groete aan julle van Basie.
Getting out of the army, there was no debriefing. It was a question of, there you are, here you sign the paper, out. But there were no waving crowds, as the movies predicted. I think there wasn't anything. There was nothing around. Nobody gave you you were in effect forgotten. And then in 1981, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I was going to get a job down the Lowveld next to Kruger Park. I knew the road forward was clear. I knew, and that materialized. It was like a vision. That's what I was going to do, and that it all happened. And then, I don't know whether the rot set in, that whatever it was, but the conditions started changing. I started having memory loss, short-term memory loss, the extreme aggressiveness, complete irrationality of losing my temper for the slightest things, and that got progressively worse. Also the hypervigilance, the waking up, I still do that. I can identify sound within a millionth of a second. I know where it is, how far it is, what it is, and what it's doing. The emotional what is the word? Detachment is the word. I find it difficult to become emotionally involved, and I think due to that, I think I have emotional abuse tendencies with my family. We started discussing this thing about post-traumatic stress disorder, how it affected, and so we started looking at the impact it has on the world, and the Vietnam syndrome started coming back to us. From 70% of their homeless men are ex-combatants. 50,000 Vietnam vets committed suicide, which is more than died there. Those figures had sort of startling effects. I'm one of those statistics. And that was frightening, because there's been no help. The government is not going to look after us. The previous government has now made provision. The medical field is making a bloody fortune out of us, those who have money. And the down and outs, they've got nothing. They've got booze and crime available to them. And the only way we can get this together is to help each other.
Ek is in die buik geskiet. 3 skote het ek 2 operasies ondergaan. En daarna toe sit hulle my by een militêre hospitaal.
In die enige geval wat met ons gebeur het, ons was uit op pad dorp toe om die dorp te gaan ondersoek, en toe trap die buffel van ons landmyn. Rol ons om.
En beserings?
2 ouetjies is dood.
We will help ourselves. The army's not going to help us. The psychologists not going to help us. We've got to help ourselves. You know, we're not getting younger here.
Sort of, you get frustrated and you sort of can't, and you turn to liquor. I mean,
yes,
it's natural, like that.
Wat sê die man? Ja, ek kan nie.
We came back to South Africa. He left the police force. And from then on, he started to try and compensate. We stayed in the farm, and there were some little African black children, and we were very poorly paid. We didn't have 2 cents to rub together, but he went out and he bought 5 of them, brand new shiny red bicycles to ride to school. You know, he was trying to compensate the whole time for things he'd done. And I think the worst part is that he very seldom ever said anything. So it was very, very difficult to understand what he was going through. I think it was very difficult for any of the wives to understand what the men were going through.
Things go well for a while. I can assimilate myself back into society. I have done so since 1984. But things go well for a while, and then I go either into a depression or I go into the opposite state of mania. And when I'm in that state, paranoia plays a big part, hypervigilance and paranoia, where I feel like I'm being watched and monitored, and I feel like my life is being threatened. And then I start going back into that mode where, in the bush, where I pack things in a small bag and I'm ready for action. I'm ready to take on a fight. But the war's finished. I know that intellectually, in my mind, I know the war is over. It's gone, but it's still raging inside me.
He arrived at his brother Peter's place of work, apparently wrapped in an old stinky blanket. He'd been out in the street for nobody knows how long. He hadn't bathed, his hair was matted, he looked like the worst kind of tramp. He was on drugs, and he became a terrible embarrassment to his family. His sister and two brothers are very upstanding. They all hold very good jobs, and are, fairly well off. And I know that they've tried to help him, but it just seems that John takes for a while and then he's off again. He just can't seem to keep still. He keeps on searching. And I doubt he's going to find what he's looking for, which I think is to be forgiven. That's what he seems to always ask me when he phones. Is he forgiven? I just think there's nothing to forgive. It's not your fault to behave like that. And he seems to be after this whole forgiveness thing. He's expecting somebody to come along and say, wow, there you go, you're forgiven. Everything's fine now.
And after that, it was as if I was looking at the scene from above, and I could see myself standing there with this gun in my hand and everyone looking a bit shocked. And the family from the kraal standing there, and they were also very, very shocked. And the kids were just very shocked. And I walked away. I just said to the team, clean up. I said to the owner of this kraal, you must bury this body now. It's your responsibility. It's your problem. I am a killer, but nothing to hide. I told the world that on the 23rd of July 1997 at the Truth Commission.
Yeah, working in that direction now.
Ek is glad nie spyt ek was daar gewees nie. Alhoewel dit 'n moord van tyd was, ek dink ek glo die politici het juist lang voor die tyd geweet dat hulle wel die land gaan teruggee en dat ons basies ons tyd gaan mors het en lewens gaan mors het, geld gemors het om maar bo te wees. Ons het allemaal weggekom daar. Ons het op 'n puntenstelsel gewerk. Dit is nou toe ons terug is in Suid-Afrika. Die generaals en die brigadiere en die senior offisiere het besluit dat die geld wat oor was, ons het 'n geheime fonds gehad. Daar was 'n hele paar miljoen rand in die geheime fonds gewees. Die geld wat ons eintlik moes toekom, het hierdie mense gevat en hulle is weg daarmee. En mense soos ek en myself, wat julle nou gesien het hierso is waar ek my lewe maak. Ek lei honde op om in die buiteland myne uit te haal. Daar is van my honde wat in Kroatië werk. Daar is 2 van my honde wat in Irak werk. Daar is nou 4 van my honde wat in Tanzanië werk. En dit is maar hoe ons se lewe moet maak. En die ander is, die senior mense is alles weg met die room van alles. Het hulle pad gevat en ons basis niet zo in die koue gelos.
The day that it was diagnosed, because Henry, now 11-year-old, he was about 9, they said damn or darn or something. And Mark responded completely inappropriately. And I asked Mark to leave us as a family. And then he admitted to feeling extraordinary depression, and he took himself off to a doctor to talk about it, and that's where the diagnosis process started. I've lost a lot of tolerance to his bad temper and his bad mood, and now because he's basically over the last 16 years he's angry with me all the time.
Well, then he was like, not particularly you part of it.
My perception is that it's with me. It's with the things that I do and the things that I say and the things that I don't do and how I say them and when and what I it's just, I just get the feeling that I'm in trouble every day of my life. Recently we've been going to marriage counselling and we've been going to psychologists on and off, so there's been some sort of improvement, but I've become very intolerant to Mark's anger towards me. The consequences of fighting in a war is dominating my life, and I fear that will continue, and it is, as I sit here now, it is continuing, because I still am in this, I consider an abusive relationship. I consider myself an abused person, and emotionally abused. I can't say Mark's never hit me. He hit me once, but that was long ago, and it won't ever happen again. But I consider myself emotionally abused, and I fear for that, for the continuation of that. That's my greatest fear.
Mine is being statistically on the edge of being homeless, being on the road, being a bum, and losing my family in the consequence, and everything else, ending up alone, having to use all those old survival skills again.
The whole don't cry stuff, and be macho, and women must be quiet and sweet and gentle and loving, and must sacrifice their lives for the sake of their men and their children, and men must beat their chests and hunt and be angry with their women. It's supposed to be sort of sexy, bloody unsexy. It destroys relationships and people, I think. Leaves you an empty society where nobody's anybody. Went to the lawyer. We told him we wanted to get divorced. We explained to him that we still loved each other, but we were just really bad for each other, and, you know, we needed to get divorced. And it was relatively painless, as divorces go. Obviously, I missed John terribly. Missed the excitement of Southwest. I missed the life in Southwest. I missed the lack of restrictions. I also, in a way, opted out. I lived on farms. I became a hermit. I suppose to a certain extent I still am today, within my own company. I'm also fairly cold, fairly hard. So that's life.
Ek leer ons iets sodat hy homself kan verdedig, en wanneer ek en sy ma, of ek of sy ma in die moeilikheid is, het ons 'n safe room waarin hy kan gaan. Hy weet om hierdie vuurwapen te hanteer. Hy sal in die kamer ingaan, hy sal homself toesluit. Hy weet om met 'n selfoon te werk, en hy sal 'n vuurwapen wil mee. Indien dit nodig sal wees, sal hy die polisie kan bel, en hy sal met 'n vuurwapen kan werk. Hy sal homself kan beskerm binne die huis.
Jy gaan vinnig af.
Trek hom weer terug. Haal af je vingers van die snaar af. Oké, korrel daar. Vat je tijd. Vat je tijd. Niet haastig wees, hè. Hulle het ons bed by ons 4 mense al 4 keer in 1 jaar ingebreek. Ek dink al wat hulle op hierdie stadium van die bedstryd weghou hier so by ons, is maar seker die feit dat ons honde oplei. En dit is seker maar een van die afskrikmiddels wat ons het.
Nogal bang. Maar met waar, jy hou je maar reg. Jy hou je maar reg vir in geval iets gebeur. Ek is waar in die nag op en loop die huis en kyk maar rond en sulke goed.
Ek het gisterand weer die bed uitgejaag om te kom kyk of iets buite by die voertuig aan die gang is, die honde het geblas. En nee, mens moet op jou hoede wees. Mens moet maar die hele tyd op jou hoede wees.
Ek het in Oshikati veiliger geslaap. Baie veiliger.
And it's as if the war never ends. We go back into civilian life. We expect it to fit back into society, but I, for one, believe that the crime situation in this country in particular can be attributed to highly trained soldiers coming back from the wars, not being debriefed properly, not being assimilated back into society. We were taught the skills how to kill people. We were very good at that. How do we get back into society? I've been accused of stealing fraud. Took a shotgun. I thought that I was going to end my life. And I'd been thinking about it for a long time. I phoned my wife. It was going to be like the last phone call to her, my ex-wife, just to make a contact with her, and then and I ended up in this club with a shotgun, not protected in with security. And they found marijuana, cannabis in my bag. They searched that, and then the police were called and they arrested me. And they beat me up as well. How many years? 8 years, like this. Here's my home.
We are still in a kind of combat situation, especially with our crime. It's common. Everybody knows of or has experienced violence, domestic or otherwise. It's the safety and satisfaction in living with somebody who is skilled, those combat skills. If you're going to be in a war zone, you might as well have a soldier who knows what to do with all the weaponry. That's how the system keeps itself going, disliking the machoism, but at the same time stroking the machoism to some extent.
I feel sad when I look at this place because I see people who are still broken, people who are still hurt, a society that still carries the scars of what's happened to it. When I look at people who are here with me back at home and I see what's happened to them, and I suppose my overwhelming emotion is I'm glad that I've come through it all, and I'm glad that I've been able to put myself back together, and that I've had people around me who have helped me do that. I made a bonfire and I sat around down and I burnt all the things that I had, the photographs, the t-shirts, the flags, anything that reminded me of this place. You know, I've spent 17 years trying to forget what happened here, and yet it's probably the most real memory that I have of my entire life so far. And coming here and replacing those memories, replacing those images with something new, seeing a base that isn't occupied by Kufut, seeing a people who smile and who laugh, and just changing the visual image that I have in my mind of this place has been very important. And for me now, it's the beginning of the next 17 years of my life, really. This is the end of that whole chapter, which started when I was 16 years old and had to sign up to come to the army.
Wil jy aan Engels asseblief oor die internet van jou ouers op Marikana. David Cornelissen het op die 4de verjaar. Ek weet nie waar hy is nie, maar David, jou mommy en pa en broer, dink aan jou en baie liefdeer en baie trots op jou.
In lopende zaken de problemen van allochtone jongeren.
Code, which will affect 6 areas of the country, Only 1 in 10 people are thought to be aware of the changes. There are